Hello, good evening, and welcome back to the chemistry classes. Now, today I will start a new chapter, and that is chemical bonding. So, let us start. Chemical bonding is one of those essential chapters in chemistry where you get to know the basics about how a chemical bond occurs between the elements. Now, in the previous classes, we have already discussed about the atoms, the molecules, and how they are represented. Now, today we will learn about how do these elements, the atoms and molecules of these elements, they continuously frame bonds between them, right? So let's begin. So the first question that I would like to discuss with you all is that what is the need for this chemical bond? Why do we need chemical bonding? Why do elements and atoms they bond? Well, in the previous class, there's just a small recapitulation of the previous class. If you remember, I have mentioned that not all elements they have the noble gas configuration. Okay, so I would start writing that why do atoms chemically combine to form compounds? So that is the question. Now, the first obvious reason is that not every element, or we can write it as not every atom of an element fulfill the octet doublet rule. Second, they have tendency to form bonds, or they have tendency to form not the bonds, they have tendency to achieve. Let me write achieve. That would be the perfect one. Achieve the noble gas configuration. Now, what is the need, or why is there a necessity of achieving the noble gas configuration? Well, the answer is very simple. That is, noble gases, if you see their atomic structure, you will find that their outermost shells are fully filled, okay, and that's why they have a very stable structure. And since they have a very stable structure, each and every single atom of an element, they have the tendency to achieve that particular structure. Now, how do they do that? That is either by losing electrons or by adding of electrons, that is by gaining electrons, either of them. So how does that occur? Even there is another special type of bond that is formed that I will be discussing in today's class. Now, coming back to the next topic, that is the different types of chemical bonding. Types of bond. So basically there are different types of bond, but according to your syllabus, what I have seen that it comes in ICSE, CBSE and the West Bengal Board, there are three different types of bond that they have classified into. One is ionic or electrovalent. The next one is covalent, and the last one is coordinate. So these are the three basic classification of the bonds. The three different types of bonds. Now, going into the details of these particular bonds, we will first consider the electrovalent bond, and maybe in the next further classes we will be discussing about the coordinate and the covalent and coordinate bonds. Okay, So starting with ionic bond. So there are a few characteristics of this ionic bond. Number one characteristic is that always formed between a metal and a non-metal atom, or rather metallic and non-metallic atom. Okay, to be more specific. So always found between a metallic and a non-metallic atom. Then second property is that transfer of electrons take place. Okay, transfer of electron take place. Next point. Now, since this is formed between a metal and a non-metal, and there are transfer of electrons, hence ions are formed after the exchange of electrons. See, I am going by the very basic concepts of these particular bonds. In your book you will find there are a variety of definitions written, but I am not going by the definitions because your books are already there for the definitions. I am trying to convey you the basic concepts behind these bonds. So the first one is always formed between a metallic and a non-metallic atom. Transfer of electrons take place. Ions are formed after the exchange of electrons. And there is another property is that high melting and boiling point. So you can well identify that these particular compounds, they have a high melting and boiling point. Okay, now I'll keep it till this. There are many other properties also, but I'll keep it till this because I want to show you that how this ionic bond occurs. So first I'm going to demonstrate the ionic bonding. Okay, now in your books you will find the very basic example of sodium and chlorine, that is sodium chloride is taken, but I'm not taking that. I'm taking a different one. Okay, I'm not going by the books as I said. So let me take magnesium oxide. Okay, we all are very much acquainted with this particular compound, magnesium oxide, because in your especially in CBSE, in your class 10 first chapter, you will find that there is one experiment that when you are burning a magnesium strip in air, at that time a dazzling white flame is produced and magnesium oxide is formed. So that's why, since you people are quite acquainted with this particular compound, I have taken this magnesium oxide. So the two elements that I have is magnesium, whose atomic number is 12, and I'm taking oxygen, whose atomic number is 8. Now these are the two elements. Now if I go by their electronic configuration, that is EC, it will be 282. EC 26. Right? Now there are two types of way by which I can represent this in a diagrammatic form. One is your orbital structure and another one is your Lewis dot structure. Okay. Now first I'll be showing you the orbital structure and then I will be showing you the Lewis structure for the same compound. So for this one, if I go by the orbital structure, so for this orbital structure, you find over here I'm drawing it for magnesium. So this is my nucleus. So I hope this is clear, right? Now let me fill it up with the electrons. So in the first shell there will be 2. Over here in the next shell there will be 8, and in the third shell there will be 2. So I have filled up my orbits with the electrons. Now this is for magnesium, Mg. This one will be for oxygen. Now oxygen has only 2 shells, so that's why in the first shell 2, and in the next shell 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So total of 8 electrons. Now what happens if you recall the properties that I have told you? The ionic bond forms between a metal and a non-metal. So this is my metal and this is my non-metal. Metal, non-metal. Now what happens? Now comes the big trick. That is, as I said in the second point, transfer of electrons take place. So what happens? These are the 2 extra electrons of magnesium. Now why am I calling them extra electrons? Because you can understand, magnesium, from the configuration, magnesium has 2 options. Either it can give away these 2 electrons, or it has to take another 6 electrons. Now you tell me which one is more easier. Shedding of 2 electrons or taking up 6 electrons? Obviously shedding of 2 electrons. And that is the reason why over here magnesium will be shedding of its 2 electrons. Now here already the configuration was 2, 8, 2, and here it was 2, 6. So now it gives 2 electrons, these 2 electrons, to oxygen. Okay, now oxygen also has the same thing. See, oxygen, it can either take 2 electrons from the electronic configuration, it can either take 2 electrons or it can give away 6 electrons. Which one is more easier? Taking up 2 electrons. So the same way over here also, oxygen is taking up 2 electrons. This is the reason. Okay, and while doing so, you will find that both are achieving the noble gas configuration. Right? So after this, now after transfer, listen to this very carefully. All ICSE, CBSE board students and all the other boards. It is very much essential that you draw 2 diagrams. One is before the transfer of electrons and another one is after the transfer of electrons. Okay? Because it is only after the transfer of electrons that the ions are formed. I'll draw it once again. So here I have all the 3 shells now. This one will not be there right now because, why? Because the last shell will not be there because magnesium has given off the 2 electrons from its outermost shell. So that shell is empty right now. So over here the rest of the electrons will remain the same where it was, and over here oxygen has gained the 2 electrons, right? So now there is a special way of representing this. How many electrons magnesium has shed off? 2 electrons. So I will give it in third bracket and write it as 2 plus. Okay, and for oxygen I will write this as 2 minus. Now you will ask me, okay, obviously, let me write the new configuration 2828. Now you see, both of them, they have achieved the noble gas configuration. Now you will ask me that why 2 plus and why 2 minus, right? Over here is the calculation. So before, magnesium was having how many electrons? For magnesium, protons was how many? 12. Electrons, what is how many electrons are there right now? Plus, minus 10. Because magnesium has given off 2 electrons. So 10 electrons are there right now. So how much this accounts to? Plus 2. And for oxygen, protons were how much? Protons were 8. And electrons how much? Now the electrons are 10, right? So plus 8 minus 10. So it comes to minus 2. So that is the reason why oxygen has minus 2 and your magnesium has plus 2. Okay, I hope this concept is clear to all of you. Now this is the orbital structure. I will be showing you the Lewis structure as well. Okay, so now let us move on with the Lewis structure. Now, if you recall, I have already done this particular Lewis structure in the previous classes, where I have told you that only the last shell is considered, right? So, only the last shell electron is considered. So, in that similar manner for magnesium and oxygen, right? Magnesium outermost shell, how many electrons? Only 2. So, we will write 2 electrons of magnesium. And for oxygen, how many electrons will be there? 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right? Now, in that same way, the transfer of electrons will take place. This comes here, this comes here. Again, here also, both the diagrams you will have to draw. That is before and after the transfer of electrons. So previously this was 2, 8, 2 and this was 2, 6. So now it becomes magnesium 2 plus over here, because there are no further electrons in the outermost shell. While for oxygen it becomes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And the 2 electrons it has got from magnesium. So this becomes 2 minus. Now 2 plus and 2 minus concept I have already discussed. So now the configuration becomes 2, 8, 2, 8. So both of them have achieved the noble gas configuration. Hence the electrons got transferred. And now they have achieved the noble gas configuration, hence it's an ionic compound. So this is the way the ionic compounds are formed. Okay. Now regarding this particular ionic bond, if you have any other query in your mind, if you have any other question in your mind, please do write in the comment section, because in that case your query will be solved. I will be replying to all your comments that you will be writing it out over there. So today till this much. Thank you everyone. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay prepared as always. Thank you so much. And before I leave, there is another thing that I would like to tell you all. At the end of my video, you will find that there is one particular contact given for the Hindi tuition. So if any one of you are interested, you may contact that person. He's a very close friend of mine. I know him for a long time and he's a good teacher. So thank you everyone. See you in my next class with the next part of this particular chapter, covalent bonding and coordinate bonding. Stay safe, stay prepared. Thank you.